What's going on, everybody? Dottz here, and welcome to my updated weapons guide for the Elder Scrolls Online. So when I was going through my old catalog of ESO beginner guides to make sure that all of the information in them was still totally relevant and up to date, I did notice that my weapon guide had some misinformation in it. So I wanted to make an update video to that guide to make sure that you guys are getting all of the correct information and not listening to that and getting some wrong stuff just because the game has been updated since then and some things have changed. And if you guys see the beginner guides on my channel and you're wondering, is this updated or not? Generally, if the guide has not been updated, it means that the information is still relevant, like guilds, guild swords, and traders really hasn't changed. Certain topics like that, the champion points haven't really changed as I've made those guides, so they're still totally relevant. But this guide's obviously getting an update right now. I'm going to be updating my vampire and werewolf guide when Greymore comes out because of the vampire updates, and then my complete beginner guide will be getting an update as well, even though the majority of that info is still totally relevant. I just like to update that guide yearly. But this video is going to cover weapons, and I'm going to talk about which weapons you should use and why, general weapon combinations, and in what situations you're going to want to use them. And we're just going to go through all the weapons here. So before we get into this, though, I do want to explain a quick pillar of ESO in terms of how abilities work, because it'll help make this guide make more sense. Abilities will deal more damage and do more healing, which is also called scaling. They will scale with the resource that they cost. So if an ability costs stamina, it will deal more damage and do more healing, aka scale with stamina and weapon damage. Abilities that cost magicka will scale with magicka and spell damage, and their criticals will be based off of either weapon critical for stamina or spell critical for magicka. Occasionally, there are skills that kind of break this rule, and it'll be like a magicka skill that will scale with like stamina, but it'll say directly on the tooltip that it scales with your highest resource. So if you have more spell damage and magicka, it will use those stats for its scaling, and then stamina, vice versa. So actually getting into the weapons now, we're going to start with two-handed. Now, two-handed is most commonly used for stamina PvP, stamina PvE, and very seldomly magicka PvP. Now, the reason for that is if you look at the skills, you can see they all cost stamina. So obviously a stamina user is going to be taking the most advantage out of this skill. Also, the light attacks from two-handed, because it's a physical weapon, scale with stamina and weapon damage. This is also evident in the passives. You can see that the passives will augment the skills in the two-handed skill line and help give you more stamina-based bonuses. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dottz, you did say actually magicka can take advantage of this. Now, why is that? If you look to the heavy weapons passive, it'll give you a bonus based off the type of weapon you have equipped. And if you would equip a sword, you will get a flat % damage increase. So swords increase your damage done by X%. Now, this means that if you are a magicka person with a sword equipped, you'll be just getting a flat damage increase that doesn't really care if it's physical, magical, whatever. You're just getting a flat damage increase. Now, again, it's very rare that you'll see 2H used. It's more used in niche builds for PvP. It's generally more like a for fun weapon. Generally, you'll see the destruction staff used for a more offensive bar. But I did just want to mention here so that if you do see a magicka user with a two-handed sword on, that is why. So I want to make sure that you guys do know that. Moving into the next weapon, we have one-handed shield. Now, one-handed shield is going to be most commonly used by tanks for PvE, and then for PvP, it could be used by either stamina or magicka users. Now, the reason it's going to be used by tanks is because it obviously gives you the best ability to block. It gives you the most resistance due to having that shield being like another piece of gear on your armor, so you get the armor value from that. And then if you just look at the skills, you can see that it really favors a tank playstyle. Puncture is a taunt. You have low slash, which reduces your enemies damage done. It's just defensive posture helps give you absorb some damage. It's a very, very good weapon line for tanks, and you'll always see a tank with a one-handed shield on. Now, again, passives are also augment tankiness. Reduces the cost of blocking, increases the amount of damage you can block, increases your bash attacks, increases the amount of damage you can block from projectiles, increases movement speed while actively blocking. So it is just it helps favor a tankier playstyle. Now, you can even see, from me just reading those passives, you might be asking the same question. Well, if it's a stamina costing skill line, all the skills cost stamina, why can a Magicka character use it? Again, all about the passives. Whenever you're wondering why someone is doing something in ESO, it's usually a good... If you look to the passives, that can usually be a good indicator of why they might be doing something. And as you can see from me reading through those, none of these skills or none of these passives really require any of the skills to be used, right? It's just having a one-handed shield equipped. And if you are a slower moving Magicka person, or you want to just be tankier inside of PvP, right? And if you can, let's say, get your heals from like your class or something, you can use the one-handed shield to get the benefit of all the great passives that it has by reducing that block cost, reducing the amount of damage increasing the amount of damage you can block, increasing the damage you can block from those projectiles, giving your bash some additional spell damage and costing less stam. So Magicka can take advantage of this too. Obviously, stamina will have some other advantages, one-handed shield, that Magicka doesn't. For example, you can use some of these skills since they all cost stam, which is a good benefit. It reduces the stamina cost of your one-handed shield abilities by 15%, and, you know, increases your weapon damage. So that's something that stamina is going to get a better use out of the Magicka. But still, I did just want to mention that it can be used by either resource. But again, the long-winded it was a long-winded version, but it can be generally used by tanks in PvE and Magicka and stamina users in PvP. Dual wield is going to be most commonly used by stamina in PvE, stamina in PvP, and very rarely, similarly to two-handed, Magicka in PvP. Again, if you just look at the skills, you can see why. All cost stamina, all deal physical damage, give bonuses to stamina users. And the passives all kind of indicate the same thing, increasing weapon damage, reducing stamina costs, you know, physical dots, physical penetration, ignoring, increased weapon critical. So as you can see, the dual wield line favors damage dealers that are physical, aka stamina. But again, similarly to two-handed, Magicka can take advantage of it because of the twin blade and blunt passive. Because again, each sword increases your damage done by X%. It's the exact same explanation that I gave for two-handed. It's a more niche style that you won't generally see because, again, the light attacks do scale off of stamina and weapon damage, similarly to one-handed shield and two-handed. So, you know, you won't be getting, you know, if you're a Magicka person using dual wield, your light attacks won't be being augmented at all from your Magicka or spell damage. But again, this can be used by Magicka users for like a more for fun build because you have that flat percentage sword increase. You know, if you like the aesthetics of it, can be cool. But again, it's a more niche style that you don't see as much anymore. It used to be more common, but not as much anymore. Generally now, Magicka users will use a destruction staff for their damage bar. Bow is a pure stamina weapon for stamina damage dealing. The light attack scale off of weapon damage and stamina, and as you can see from the cost of the weapons, they all are of the skills, they all cost stamina, so it's going to favor a stamina damage dealing playstyle, and all of the passives simply augment your bow abilities or increase things like weapon critical, you know, gives you major expedition when you dodge roll, etc., etc. So it really favors a high mobility stamina playstyle. Now, you most commonly see the bow used for stamina PvP or stamina PvE. Now, just talking really quick for physical damage dealers, the most I'm going to go over weapon combinations at the end. But again, stamina PvP, stamina PvE, those are the most common times you'll see people use bow. We also have the destruction staff. So the destruction staff can be used primarily by Magicka damage dealers for PvP and PvE, but also tanks and healers. Now, I'm going to explain why, but first, I mean, you can just look at all the skills and see why. Cost Magicka, cost Magicka, cost Magicka, cost Magicka, cost Magicka. Oh, this costs nothing, but gives minor Magicka steal and major breach, which, you know, are spell resistance and minor Magicka steal. And then cost Magicka. And as you can even see from the passives, it just augments those destruction staff skills and gives you Magicka-based increases. So this is going to be, again, primarily your Magicka damage dealing weapon. Now, why can tanks and healers take advantage of this? So if you read through the passives, you will see inside of Ancient Knowledge that equipping a Frost Staff reduces the cost of blocking by 36% and increases the amount of damage you can block by 20%. So it's like the light version of a Sworded Shield. So if you, for example, don't put points in trifocus, this is a little trick I'm going to teach you guys for the Frost Staff. If you don't put points in trifocus, you can see, well, the Frost Staff is equipped, blocking costs magic instead of stamina. Very commonly when you're tanking, you don't want that to happen. You want your block cost to always be out of your stamina pool. So if you don't put the points in trifocus as a tank, your block will still cost stamina all using that Frost Staff, but you'll get the benefits of Ancient Knowledge. Now, doing this allows you to use skills from the Destruction Staff. So, you know, you can use like for an example, you'll most commonly see a tank use like a back bar, let's say, Ice Staff, and they'll be able to use Elemental Blockade. And Blockade of Frost reduces the enemy's movement speed and can immobilize shield enemies. So this allows you to slow down enemies inside of dungeons and help root them in place as well. And whenever Elemental Blockade deals damage, the enchant on that Destro Staff bar will also go off, even if you're on your Sword and Shield bar on your front bar. So that's, you know, you can kind of see some of the utility and where it comes in. Even more advanced tanks will also use Blockade of Storms. Healers will do this as well. We'll use Blockade of Storms, so a lightning staff, to set concussed enemies off balance, because that's a really important debuff for high-end PvE. So you can see that you can, if you really read through the passives and read into the skills, you can use the some skills for more stuff than just damage. You can also use them for some of their utility benefits. Again, healers will also use the shock staff for the reason I just stated, for that Blockade of Storms. So to sum up the Destruction Staff skill line, most commonly used by magic and damage dealers in PvP and PvE, but also used by a utility bar for tanks and healers. The Restoration Staff is obviously a Magicka weapon for healers in PvP and PvE, as well as Magicka people in PvP as well, simply because these are all your Magicka heals. This all is about healing and all cost Magicka, so obviously your Magicka users will be taking the most advantage out of this, and the passives just augment and enhance the skills from this and give you Magicka-based benefits. Pretty straightforward weapon, not much else to say about it. Now, in terms of common weapon combinations that you will see used, because if you don't know, once you hit level 15 in the Elder Scrolls Online, you will be able to wield two weapons at the same time, one on your front bar, as you can see here, and one on your back bar. Now, these are just the most common weapon combinations for, I guess let's start with Stamina PvE. For Stamina PvE, your back bar will usually be a bow. That's the most common back bar that you'll see as for Stamina PvE. And your front bar will either be dual wield or two-handed. The reason that the bow is generally the back bar is before a volley. It's an AoE damage over time skill that's very, very important, that the other skill lines, like dual wield, two-handed, one-handed shield, they don't have this type of skill. And it's very, very important for Stamina PvE. So like I said, you'll usually have the bow on the back bar with dual wield or two-handed on the front bar. For Stamina PvP, you will most commonly see two-handed 90% of the time. It's one of the most common weapons for Stamina PvP due to the momentum skill. It gives you major brutality, minor endurance, and then one of the morphs can either give you a nice heal or help reduce movement impairing effects on you. It's just a very good skill line for PvP. Berserker Strike is also an amazing burst skill for PvP. So you'll usually see two-handed paired with either one-handed shield, dual wield, or bow or Stamina PvP. Now, in terms of Magicka characters, Magicka damage dealers, you're going to most commonly see a double Destruction Staff used for PvE. And most commonly, you will see double Fire Staves used simply because if you look at the Ancient Knowledge passive, equipping a Flame Staff increases your damage done with single target abilities by 8%. Occasionally, certain characters can potentially use a Lightning Staff if you have a lot of AoE in your class, or if your class gives you specific benefits to lightning type skills. In that case, a Lightning Staff might be more beneficial to you, but in general, you'll most commonly see Flame Staves used for PvE. But again, double Destruction Staff, both bars for Magicka PvE. And then Magicka PvP will typically use a Destruction Staff on one bar with either a Restoration Staff or a one-handed shield on the other bar. I don't really see double Destruction Staff as much in PvP. I've seen it before, but it's not as common. So generally, you'll do a destruction staff paired with, like I said, either a resto or a one-handed shield. And then super niche builds can use either dual wield or two-handed, but I don't generally recommend it. For tanks, your most common weapon combinations are going to be one-handed shield on both bars or one-handed shield and a frost destruction staff on your back bar. Remember, if you do this, though, do not put points into trifocus. You can also tank with a lightning staff on your back bar, but that's a way more high-end play style, and generally I recommend for newer tanks to do the either double one-handed shield or one-handed shield and the frost staff on the back bar. And this is for PvE. Tanks in PvP, way more niche style, so I won't get into that here in this beginner guide. Now, for healers, you're going to be using a lightning destruction staff paired with a restoration staff. Pretty straightforward. For PvP as a healer, you're going to be using either a double restoration staff or restoration staff and a one-handed shield. And the reason you'd use the one-handed shield is for all the reasons I listed when I talked about that skill line and explained it for Magicka. But that's pretty much it, guys. My updated weapons guide for ESO. One other thing I do want to mention, though, before I wrap this up, is that weapons that are held in two hands use 2 set bonuses. This is actually a common question I get on all my builds. So, for example, Ice Staff of the Potentates. This is the only piece of Potentates gear that I have on my character anywhere. But as you can see, I'm getting that 2-piece set bonus. Reduces the damage taken from players by 5%. Because a Ice Staff is held with both hands, it takes up both slots here. It counts for 2 items. Just like a one-handed shield, the dagger and the shield, this is 2 items, so it counts for 2 parts of a set bonus. Staves also do as well. Staves count for 2 pieces. Bows count for 2 pieces. Two-handed counts for 2 pieces. So does destruction staff. Destruction and resto staff. So that is something to keep in mind. So if you see a build that only has, let's say 3 pieces of a set on its body, and then the staff, but they have all 5 set bonuses, it's because the staff, or the two-handed weapon, or the bow, counts for 2 set bonuses. I just wanted to mention that right here at the end. So guys, if you found this guide helpful and if you enjoyed it, I really appreciate if you smacked a like on it. If you have any questions relating to weapons, or if I went through something too fast and you need it cleared up, please leave a comment below and I will do my best to answer it. And to keep up with all the great Elder Scrolls Online as well as other gaming content here on the Dottz Gaming YouTube channel, please hit that sub button as well as the bell to keep notifications on. So thank you guys so much for stopping by today. I very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.